In this video, I'm going to talk about keyboards, and one of the most frustrating things starting out programming the iPhone is figuring out how do you get rid of the keyboard on the screen when you're done with it. And you would think this would be really easy to do, and it turns out it's different depending on what kind of keyboard you're using, and that's probably what makes this the most frustrating part. If you're using the standard keyboard, you're going to do it one way. And if you're using the number pad keyboard, which is what I like to use a lot for on specific text fields, say for example, you're asking somebody for their height. Well, if you're asking them for their height, they would never type in characters. And that makes kind of logical sense to limit them to the number keyboard. The problem is the number keyboard does not operate under the same principles as the standard character keyboard. So I'm going to give you a little demo on how to do both of those and how to solve both those problems. So to start out with, I'm in MonoTouch, and I'm going to make a new project. We're going to make File, New, and Solution. We're going to make a C#. We're going to go into MonoTouch, and we're going to find the iPhone. And under iPhone, we're just going to make a standard application, a single view application here. I'm going to call this Keyboard Demo to make life simple, and I'm going to click OK. What we should have is a very simplistic application, iPhone application. If I click the build button, I should pretty much get a screen up that's blank. There's nothing to this. This is a single view. It's not like in the previous videos where I was doing very complicated things with storyboards. So let's right away open up our zip file where all of our controls kind of go and stuff. And we'll add in some text fields and play around with the couple different options we have here. Start out with, I hate when my view background is gray, so I'm going to make that completely white. I just selected my view and dragged the color up to make it white. And that's just, once again, something I don't like to see. Apple made white the cool color. When it comes to both devices and the concept of, the black and white devices, all the phones now are both black and white. It's really kind of crazy. Before in the 90s, they're doing the Macs with different weird, crazy colors. Anyhoodles, I'm going to drag out a label and some text boxes. So the first text box I'm going to drag out and kind of label through is like a person's name, like if they're filling out a form for their name. So I've made a label, call it name. I'm going to drag out a text field and kind of drag it in. You can see that the cool thing about the iPhone SDK within Xcode and the way that the GUI graphic tools and stuff, it automatically gives you these blue lines that gives you really easy so you know exactly where to put something to make sure that it's kind of all lined up with Apple's human interface guidelines, which is something you as a developer you should really be following. So next I'm going to bring out a label, call this height. And we're going to give them two text box options. So we're going to drag out two more labels, and we'll fix those in a second. And we'll drag out two text boxes, actually. We're going to make one for the height and feet. And kind of make that there. That makes kind of sense, right, folks? And make that the right height. And kind of just make sure that that lines up in the middle. That looks about good. And we'll drag out one more for the height in inches. Say, for example, I am 5'6" versus 5'8", 6'1", those kind of things. I am American, so I am not in the metric system. For those of you that are, good for you. Our country is really backwards when it comes to that kind of stuff, and I don't see it fixing itself anytime soon. So we can see here we have our height in feet in inches. And we might as well just kind of drag this over here and kind of get it with maybe the end. That doesn't look good. I guess we'll just drag it over here. And that looks good enough for this demo app. Now, with here, I'm going to click on the first text box of our name. And what I'm going to do is look for the keyboard options. And you can see underneath here, we have keyboard. And you have a bunch of different options for the keyboard. I'm going to keep the keyboard for the name the default keyboard, which is fine. For the return key, I'm going to switch it from the default one to the word done, which is the second to the last one here. For the height, though, I really don't want people to type in text, and that would make logical sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it where it's only the number pad. And the same thing goes for inches. We would really only want this to be a number pad also. And this is what's going to get us in trouble, basically. It turns out the keyboard options for the standard name, I accidentally moved my inches here. Let me go ahead and fix that. The standard keyboard for letters is different than a number pad, and how we deal with those is different. We're now kind of almost done. We have to make our pointers to our controls in our code files so that we can access these and via code. So I'm going to bring up the editor and I'm going to hide the Solution Explorer so we can see more of what's going on. And honestly, I can hide over here the toolbox also. So let's kind of just bring this over here so we can see it in standard view. And we need to make some outlets. So I'm going to control drag from the name down to between the interface and end, and I'm going to call this text field name. Under the height, I'm going to control drag again. I'm going to make a new outlet. I'm going to call this text field height in feet. And I'm going to drag this one out and make it the text field height in inches. Text field height in inches. And now, so we have our three outlets, which these are nothing more than pointers to our controls and our graphics. So that when we go back to our C# controller, we can edit these controls and we can see them, we can interact with them in our code. At this point in time, we're done. So I like to always go to File and save in Xcode and then Xcode and quit Xcode. And the reason why is for some crazy reason, sometimes it doesn't always save. And I don't know why it doesn't do that, but I always try to hit File and save just in case. And we can see that Xcode project was updated here from MonoDevelop. So if we open up our controller, we should have some access to the outlets we just made. So let's start by just running this and showing what will happen if we don't tell the keyboards how to interact. I'm just going to go to the name box, start typing me. We'll just type in Custoda. And I hit the enter key and nothing happens. I hit the done key and nothing happens. If I go to the text field, I type in numbers and nothing happens. The keyboards do not go away if I click somewhere. Now if I click back in the text box, it knows that I'm in the text box and let me type more text. And if I click in a number box, it will let me type in more numbers. But realistically, it does not work like a normal iPhone app would, which is when you clicked anywhere else, these would go away. We'll fix them different ways. So to start off with, let's fix the actual name text field. And that's pretty easy to fix. We're actually going to call the text field property. This is the public property that we made from the pointer that we did earlier by making that outlet. And we're going to look for a should return public property. And if you take a look here, you can see here that it's a delegate and it is invoked. And the concept is if you hit the done key or the return key, whatever that key is currently assigned to, we can call a delegate that says, hey, hide the text box or the keyboard. So I'm going to do should return and I'm going to say equal and I'm going to tell it I want a delegate here. And when I did that and hit tab, it auto-completed that for me. Now, there's something in the Cocoa world, in the Apple SDK world, called First Responder. And the First Responder is very similar to .NET Focus. If you've either done Focus via ASP.NET or if you've done that in C# with WinForms, Focus basically, when you put it on there, that's where the blinking cursor goes by default and people can type in that. The same thing goes here. When you click into a text box, you become the first responder, and that's what caused the keyboard up. When you're done with it, you have to tell the text box, I am no longer in focus. And when you tell the text box that you're no longer in focus, it will release the keyboard. So how we do that is we just simply say text field name dot resign first responder. Now, the last thing we do, since this is a delegate, we're going to return true to tell it that we actually finished up with what we're kind of trying to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the Start Program with Debugging. And I'm going to go in and say Custoda again, but this I'm going to hit the Enter key and it goes away. And that's on my regular keyboard because I'm the emulator, but if I hit the done key, it does the same thing. This is exactly how it should work. Now, you would think that I should be able to do that same thing for these number fields, and that would work, but it won't. And that is the frustrating part here. This code right here, we can't just say text field height in should return and call the delegate because there is no return key on that keyboard, and that's why it does not work. So the answer to this is going to be relatively cryptic in a sense that we're going to override a method that will fix this for us. And this is found in the SDK documentation for Cocoa, and I found it. It took me a little searching for it, and once I found it, I was like, really? That's crazy. How you do this in Object-C is a little different than you would do it here in C#. I'm going to show you what I ended up doing in C# that ended up working. And this is based on not only SDK, but then I read a blog article on the internet that also explained this a little bit better. And I kind of combined those two concepts together to come up with this. So public override, we need to basically take a method that Apple provides, and it's called touches ended. And you can see here that it takes in two objects, the NSSet touches and the UI event of event, here EVT. So what this happens is that anytime a control goes through and it's done, the touch is ended, basically, event happens, we can kind of override the way that this view controller is handling those controls. And how we're going to do is we're going to loop through each control of type text box on this view, and we're going to resign first responder for any of them that currently have first responder. Does that make sense? I know it's kind of crazy to think about, but if you think about it like this in the .NET world, if we had a bunch of text fields in .NET, we could say, hey, let's see if any of these has focus. And if they has focus, let's take them out of focus. We'll give focus to somebody else. And that's the concept of what we're going to do here. So how we do that is we're going to for each loop. So for each, and what we want to do is we're going to use anonymous variables. So we're just going to say var item in this being the current view controller. And we'll make some brackets here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make another anonymous variable called tf for text field. And we're going to say tf equals item as a UITextField. And now we're typecasting. Text field. I was hoping autocorrect would find that for me quicker. And now we're going to check to see whether or not the text field is not equal to null. We want to make sure that, hey, we have something here. And that the text field is first responder. If both the text field is not null and it is first responder, we want to get rid of first responder. So how we do this is we say tf resign first responder, just like we did in the first method up here, or we just said the name of it and we said resign first responder. We're doing the same thing here. And then we're just going to basically call the built-in method that Apple's provided, part of the Cocoa framework, the UI toolkit, which Mono kind of modifies. This basically maps MonoTouch.UI kit maps over to the Cocoa UI toolkit, and then the MonoTouch Foundation maps over to the Cocoa Foundation toolkit. So by kind of taking advantage of this, we can override this method, this delegate, and tell it to take any field that's in this UI, this view controller, and tell it to lose its focus. So let's go ahead and just compile, and what we should see is that the number field, we should be able to get rid of it now. So if we go Custoda for the name here, we click on the number field, we'll hit 5, click anywhere else, it disappears. We click 5 here, it disappears. We now have that done. So basically, to wrap this up, for regular text fields, you can use the should return property, call a delegate, and tell it to resign first responder. And resigning first responder is like resigning focus. For the number pad field, this is a little bit trickier. You have to basically loop through all the text fields on the view controller and ask if they have first responder, and if they have first responder, then resign it. And that gets around it. And the reason why we have to do it like this is because the should return property is linked to the done button or the return button, the actual keystroke of hitting that with your finger on that keyboard. The number pad does not have that key, so there is no way to do that. I hope you found this useful and has solved any of the frustrations you may have with dismissing keyboards. And in the future video, I will show you how to link up the concept of the pickers and how to get rid of those, because that's another tricky thing of how to get rid of. Thanks for watching.